Section 2020 The Masks Fall. For decades, the 3HO Kundalini Yoga Sikh Dharma community managed to outwardly maintain the healthy, happy, holy facade. At the beginning of 2020, 50 years after the abuse had started, the masks finally fell. The massive revelation of wrongdoings began with the publication of the book Premka, White Bird in a Golden Cage, My Life with Yogi Bhajan, written by Pamela Sahara Dyson. In 1968, 25-year-old Pamela fell under Bhajan's spell and decided to devote her life to him and his mission. He called her Premka, which meant, the beloved of God, he said. In 2022, she learned it is the Punjabi word for mistress. For 16 long years, Bhajan presented her as the second in command, while she was a gullible puppet in his hands, like every other leader he appointed. At the end of 1984, Pamela left 3HO to finally live her own life. Her book Premka tells a story of devotion, hard work, dedication, love, loneliness, abuse, lies, exploitation, harassment, pain, and loss. Because Pamela, Premka, played a prominent role in 3HO, her voice could not be ignored in 2020. Combined with the Me Too zeitgeist, this encouraged many others to finally speak out. As more accounts of terror and abuse emerged, and still do as I write this, the true extent of the damage done became and still becomes clearer every day. Some survivors had testified before but were never listened to. Now was the time. For many years, Rishi Naths, the wacko world of Yogi Bhajan, and the Gurmukh Yoga Forum brought the issues into the open, but they received no attention and were shunned and ridiculed. After the publication of Premka, the private Facebook group Beyond the Cage was launched and joined by thousands. To this day, it is a safe space where survivors share stories, give and receive support. Second-generation adults have set up private groups, and like-minded Kundalini yoga teachers have formed communities to share and reflect on what happened and how to deal with it. The Siri Singh Sahib Corporation, SSSC, the Healthy Happy Holy Organization, 3HO, the Kundalini Research Institute, KRI, the International Kundalini Yoga Teachers Association, Sikh Dharma International, and the 3HO-related profit-making companies like Yogi Tea and Akal Security had not seen it coming. The yoga of awareness turned out to be the yoga of deafness and blindness. In the spring of 2020, the flood of allegations forced the SSSC, the umbrella organization, to scrutinize the fast-growing number of claims of sexual abuse by their founder and spiritual leader. An olive branch, AOB, a Buddhist-inspired organization that guides spiritual groups in examining ethical issues, was called in to do the job. They contacted 300 people, half deniers of the abuse and half believers. At the end of July 2020, they released the following findings.
Based on reports of harm from 36 people, the investigation concludes that it is more likely than not that Yogi Bhajan engaged in several types of sexual misconduct and abused his power as a spiritual leader.
The AOB team acknowledged that
it is likely that not all individuals who had been harmed by Yogi Bhajan came forward to participate in this investigation.
The major limitation of the AOB report was that it only considered allegations of sexual abuse of women. Claims involving child abuse, exploitation, homophobia, life threats, financial abuse, and other misdeeds were not investigated. Early 2023, an expert report was made public that focused on the abuse of 3HO children. Cult expert Dr. Alexandra Stein drafted her report on themes and impacts of 3HO childhood at the request of a group of second-generation adults. It is a tough and raw but necessary reading. Here are some of the former 3HO kids' experiences cited in Stein's report that indicate the extreme levels of neglect. They ate rose petals and drank water to give themselves a feeling of being full. Food served in schools contained bugs, worms, cigarette butts, and other foreign objects. Children suffered from continuous sleep deprivation. In the Indian schools, the latrines were often filthy and scary. They constantly had to deal with lice, boils, diarrhea, parasites, or wounds that took months to heal. One person testified they deliberately broke their arm to get much-needed attention and care. Bullying was pervasive. Many kids had suicidal thoughts and no one to talk to. Higher education was discouraged, and culture and arts were not part of the school curriculum. Harsh caning in schools resulted in injuries. Punishments consisted of holding physical positions for a long time while kneeling on gravel. Children were isolated, verbally abused, and humiliated in front of others. There was sexual abuse by teachers, American staff members, and older students. The kids were made to believe that Yogi Bhajan could read their auras and minds, which was experienced as extremely invasive. They were told that their parents were neurotic, and Yogi Bhajan was the only adult to trust. Stein's report analyzes the impact the abuse had on the survivors' lives in adulthood. 3HO was and is a cult, she says, and she includes the evidence that supports this claim in her report. Since the 2020 revelations and the AOB report, the yogic nonprofits 3HO and KRI have quietly but unmistakably repainted their facades. Yogi Bhajan's name, picture, and quotes have been removed from the forefront. No more all in white and whites only, many fewer turbans on websites and social media. The new outer image of 3HO and KRI is colorful and focuses on diversity and inclusion. Bhajan has been relegated to the back burner. Sikh Dharma International and the umbrella Siri Singh Sahib Corporation play a different game, as they still openly honor Yogi Bhajan as their spiritual leader. Their income seems less dependent on what the outside world thinks about them. Following the AOB report, the SSSC launched the Compassionate Reconciliation Program. I was a member of one of its advisory teams for almost 2 years. At the end of 2022, I stepped out as it felt like I was part of a window dressing operation. The focus during our meetings was not on healing the wounds of the past, but on finding ways to put a bandage on those stinking injuries without coming near them, looking at them, smelling them, hearing the screams, or feeling the pain. One day I asked, why is this not a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, like most other initiatives pursuing restorative justice? They told me that the word truth was left out because, in this community, in this situation, different people have different truths. Everybody should respect that. Desmond Tutu would have furrowed his brows at such an answer. In 1996, he chaired the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission, established in response to the atrocious misdeeds of the apartheid regime. In his book of Forgiving, The Fourfold Path for Healing Ourselves and Our World, he described 4 steps to healing. The first step is admitting the wrong and acknowledging the harm. Next, the stories need to be told, and the pain and damage should be witnessed. After that, forgiveness can eventually be granted. Finally, reconciliation can be sought, and a new way of living together may be explored. In May 2022, most probably triggered by juridical actions of second-generation adults, the SSSC launched the Independent Healing and Reparation Program, IHRP. People harmed by Yogi Bhajan, or any other community leader or at any of the schools in India, were invited to file a claim for reparations. Over 600 claims were reportedly filed. Other complaints, like those linked to financial abuse, exploitation, and homophobia, did not qualify for the reparations program. On April 28, 2023, Dr. Niranjan Kaur Khalsa Baker, born and raised in 3HO, spoke at the Harvard Divinity School Spring Conference about the awakening of her community to the reality of sexual misconduct, manipulation, and abuse by their spiritual teacher.
The second-generation adults are discussing what accountability could look like when some of their parents continue to hold fast to their loyalty to Yogi Bhajan, rather than believe their own children, continuing to demonstrate patterns of silence and denial. They're asking what it takes for their voices to be heard, to receive acknowledgement and accountability, and how to prevent future abuse, with some organizing lawsuits and others participating in the reparations program.
There were community leaders in the audience as she spoke in an often trembling voice. They kept silent. On June 11, 2023, a group of 100 second-generation advocates wrote an open letter and launched a petition
to make our voices heard in response to the abuses that we have experienced in the community. Many of us are currently participating in the Independent Healing and Reparations Program, which may have been well-intentioned, but is being poorly executed and is causing re-traumatization.
Less than a week later, just before the 3HO summer solstice event in New Mexico started, another shockwave went through the community. The president of the highly divided board of directors of the Siri Singh Sahib Corporation, Sahej Singh Khalsa, a second-generation adult himself and an advocate for change and truth-telling, resigned from the board and as a Sikh Dharma minister. In his resignation letter circulating on the internet, he recounted how he and his family were attacked, threatened, and abused because of his stance.